Hey everybody, Adam aka askcsradical here. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure as we go through Trails Through Daybreak. Yep, 60 hours in the tank. We are done, at least the first playthrough. You know, I might end up going back to it at some point, maybe towards when Trails Through Daybreak 2 is on its way in early 2025, at least from what we're being told. If you are new to this channel, I did a video, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, talking about my experiences thus far when I was about into Chapter 3 at Tharbad and was a little bit concerned. To kind of summarize that, I mean, like, anytime a game changes its combat system from turn-based, now granted, turn-based still is very much a key part of the gameplay here, but now they've added that hack-and-slash gameplay in Daybreak, and I have, PTSD, let's go with that, because Final Fantasy used to be a turn-based RPG, and it isn't anymore, and I haven't really loved the series since it was. So when Trails decides to go in a certain direction, I have flashbacks and I don't like it. So when the trailers initially came out, I was concerned. Playing through the first few chapters, it concerned me. Like, it was a nice change of pace for at least, minor enemies that are just a waste of time waiting for the screen to get into the battle. Then you have to go through the EXP setup. So it was nice as a time, quality of life change. But, as we get deeper and deeper into the game, does that combat hold up? And, well, we'll talk about that in a second. I just want to do a couple of things here. So I am going to flat out say a lot of negative stuff about this game. And the reason for that is because, in my honest opinion, I've played all of the mainline games. So I've played all of Sky, all of Zero Azure, all of Cold Steel, Reverie, all of it. This is my least favorite one. This doesn't mean it's a bad game. If I was to put it like on the Pixel Play podcast, which I'll link in the description, my other side project here, we usually do a rating out of 6. I would give Daybreak about a 3.5. If I was to be completely honest, that's about the most I could give it. And I did a tier list just to kind of test, how my brain was operating. And I did all the mainline games, and Daybreak is the only one that I decided to see. Everything else was a B and up. For, those who understand the S rankings, just so you kind of get an idea of, what I'm into. My S rankings were Trails in the Sky 2, Trails to whatever the second one is. I always forget. I think it's Trails to Azure, and then Cold Steel 2. I have a soft spot for Cold Steel 4, but it's more of a fan servicey level where it's just everybody all comes together, similar to Reverie. It's like Infinity War and Endgame in Trails, so there's a bit of that part to it. But yeah, like, that gives you an idea of the kind of like the mind that's working with that's been playing all of these games. And yeah, it's the only C I've ever put on a tier list so far in the series, which is concerning. Now, I'll give my reasons why. I'll also say, spoiler-wise, we're not there yet. I'm going to keep the non-spoiler stuff in the early going, so if you're watching this and, you haven't quite finished it yet, or you're maybe looking into whether or not you want to play this one, I'll say a couple of things on that, actually. Because the question comes around all the time, and this is like a side note. It bugs me a lot. Because people always ask, like, well, where should I start? And everybody's always like, you gotta go Sky, you gotta go Sky. Start with any arc and just make sure it's the first game of that arc and go from there. And you can kind of flip between the two. I started with Cold Steel 1. I didn't play Sky and 0. So I played 1 and 2, and that's about the point where I started seeing people starting to show up. So I went, maybe I should do a little bit of research. And what I ended up doing is watching videos, to kind of summarize the story then, and then I played 3 and 4, and then I went back and played Sky and 0. And honestly, it's an interesting way of looking at it too, like the actual order of things and seeing like almost like an origin story for a lot of things, which is a kind of neat thing too. Now, I know most people will say, well, it's better if you start from Sky, which is true, but also try selling somebody on the idea, especially now with Daybreak, being, hey, if you want to start this game, go back and play 10 other games first before you get there. It's not exactly an easy sell. So I would say if you're looking into Daybreak as your first entry into the Trails setting, it's not a bad one. It doesn't do too much of bending into previous stories. It does dip its toes. There are a number of characters that do show up in this game that are from the previous 3 arcs, but I think it's fair to say that, like any of the other series, if you start from the first game, you'll be fine. So, that's that. I just hate how a lot of people are very like, no, you gotta start from Sky and onwards. It's like, guys, not everyone's got 500 hours of time and however much money it takes to get all of those games together before wanting to try this one cool thing they want to play. So it honestly really doesn't matter which one you start with. People will tell you otherwise. Just If you really need to know something about a person, you can YouTube or wiki that shit. Ain't hard, so you'll be fine. But anyways, I'm going to stick to non-spoiler stuff for the first little bit, and then I will let you guys know when I start really talking about story elements that actually delves into heavy spoilers. So I'll do my best to avoid anything too serious here, but just be careful. There might be like mild spoilers through this section, but I don't think I'll get too bad with it. So going back to the combat, like I said, I was very concerned going into the game with the hack and slash combat on top of the turn-based combat. My fear was that it was going to take away from the turn-based combat, and I was correct in that assumption. And my reasoning for that is, well, not nearly as much stuff is available in the combat anymore. The court setup is essentially useless. Like, it's basically similar to what Materia is for Final Fantasy VII fans who just recently played the remake and Rebirth. But what the courts compared to, let's say, Cold Steel and Reverie, there is far less availability for you. There is still the usual attack, strike, evade, cast. I can't believe I'm blanking. Mine. There we go for magic. They're all there, but a lot of the other things that you had, like the counters and many other, like even like the special arts you would get from like cryptids towards the, because I don't think they were in the first game. I think it was just 2 onward, if I'm not mistaken. But like, there's no special arts. There's a lot of like interesting skills that are just gone. There's no like unique courses, like other than a couple that you get through achievements, which I also think is a really bad way of doling that stuff out. Because going into the overworlds where you're running around in the dungeons and such, the chests are useless because most of them are items that if you're playing on easier difficulties, I'll get to the difficulties in a second. But if you're opening a treasure chest, they're items that you rarely will use unless you're playing on Nightmare. Or they're quartz that, let's be real, they're only there to increase the amount of points you get towards that element to add for special effects, which, by the way, most of them don't really matter. The only ones that I seem to care about was the ones that help put status effects when I stun them from the hack and slash and then go into a turn-based battle, or the CP charger. So that way I can constantly use, higher attacks and stuff as much as possible. And again, I'll get into that in a sec. But a lot of the customizability that we used to have in Reverie and Cold Steel have basically gone away. Like, the way that you build characters in this game is you have one build. Power. That's it. I'm sure in Nightmare, by the way, I played on easy. Again, I'll get to the difficulty in a sec. But if you're playing not on Nightmare, I guess, you basically just build Van to be amazing at S-crafts and you're done. Because the way that the game runs is that, well, magic isn't really that much stronger because they have like linked attacks you can do with people where if you're right next to somebody and you attack, they will follow up. And half the time, it's about the same damage if you take a spell, but the spell costs something and also takes up time depending on the severity of the spell. So realistically, most of the game, I just hit attack, 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 and everybody just stood right next to each other the entire time. Whereas in Cold Steel and Reverie, placement was a big deal. I never really had to worry about avoiding that many attacks, and even if I did, it wasn't that big a deal. And like, there was never really any concern because there's not like attacks that pushed us around or anything. Like, a lot of the stuff that used to be there is missing. And a big key that I'm going to come back to several times in this review is that a lot of stuff feels missing. And it makes me feel like a lot of stuff was cut, either because they were rushing this one out the door or because they put in a new system and caused them to have to cut corners because of the resources they were allocating elsewhere. So a lot of that stuff hurt. And because of that, it meant that combat was basically mindless. Dungeons became that way too when enemy types start to get the same. And, the same stun battle. Like, it was basically, okay, level up until the XP gains are not really that useful anymore. Make sure you're getting Van's CP gauge back to 200. Make sure your S boost is at the right spot so you're able to do S crafts as well for a boss battle, and then go. And go to the event where the boss battle is going to be. And that made a good chunk of this game very dull and boring to play. And I said in my initial video a couple of weeks ago that the story is going to be what carried it. And at the time, when I was still in Chapter 3, the story had not kicked off yet. And, if you have played a Trails game before, the first game in an arc is not surprising to be slow. It tends to be more of a world builder. Like, I do remember Cold Steel was very much, it seemed like your standard high school, harem almost anime plot. And then eventually, as you get to the later half of the game, it starts to turn. And right at the very end, it hits you. And now all of a sudden, you're waiting for the second game to come out. Now, that was me when the game first came out. So if y'all are playing Cold Steel 1 for the first time, well, you don't have to worry about it because Cold Steel 2 will be right there available for you right away. Whereas I had to wait a year, and that sucked. But the story in this game, very similarly, takes a long time to go. Now, the characters, for the most part, are fine. They sell things pretty well. Like, I do think that there isn't really a bad character in the party so much as I don't feel like most of the characters in this party, the 8 that you do get, are nearly as interesting as parties previously. Now, that may be having played 3 separate arcs and 10 games already that, maybe I've found my core and it's really hard to let new ones in. I don't think that's necessarily true because I really like Judith a lot. I warmed up to Van as the game going along. I had complaints about Van being that he was just, a slightly edgier Reen. I still think there's some truth to that given how he's still very much I'm going to take everything and burden myself the entire time. I'm going to put all the weight on my shoulders and I will come to you guys whenever you need help, but I don't want anything in return. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's basically the same thing. The only difference is when Van sees a pair of boobs, he doesn't shy away from it, whereas Reen clearly would have. Speaking of Judith, there you go. But, I mean, for the most part, the story in the beginning is fine. Like, it's slow, but it's not, like, disinteresting. It just wasn't grabbing me the same way that others did, because there wasn't that, like, one thing to really pull me in. It wasn't until we started getting into Catra and Judith that things really started to pick up, and then obviously, once you hit the intermission chapter, it just goes boom, and we go off to the races. Now, I won't say anything about the ending, but I will say that it was an okay ending. I'm not going to sit there and say it was earth-shattering. It wasn't nearly as, like, shocking as, say, some of the Cold Steel ones were for me, or, like, the first Sky ending, such like that. But it did do some cool stuff. It had some cool concepts that I was not expecting. And, I'm enthusiastic about playing a second game, but it now comes with an asterisk of, okay, but if it's just this again, I don't want to suddenly go down the path of being, is Trails not going to be for me anymore? Like, I don't want to have to think about that. So, it is what it is at that point. To go on about the characters a little bit more, you have 8 party members, like I said. They are all to varying levels of okay. Like I said, I think the standout is Judith, in my personal opinion. Aaron is also good, at least in terms from a comic relief setup. I don't think any of them, at this point, keep in mind this is the first game, there's still plenty of time for stories to build, but I don't think at this time, from a story perspective or a character growth perspective, that any of them really shine. I don't think that even Van, who again I still sort of treat as Reen but slightly different, really being that much, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess, like, enthralling. Like, I couldn't tell you a single person in that party of 8 that I go, I need to know what happens with them, apart from if they're just going to let us know if Catra is, male, female, or agender at this point. That's, like, the one thing, right? Everything else is, it'd be nice to see some things. Like, I'd love to see Judith interacting with her family in a scene. Like, that'd be cool. I'd like to see Van and hear a little bit more of what happened, because apparently he took part in Meal Mirage, which is the plot from... Oh my god, am I blanking on which... Is that 2 or 4? Oh no, I think that's 4. Because I can't remember which one was... I think Meal Mirage was the one where they were fighting Osborn, so I think that's 4. Either way, like, it's still seeing, like, where all this comes in from. And not to mention knowing a little bit more of where Van really comes from and what his curse came from, or if there's a reason that, or if he just got it out of nowhere, which I'll again spoil more in later on. But there is some intrigue, but it's not so much as, like, say, the end of CS1, where I was like, holy fuck, I need to play this, or CS3, where I was heartbroken and couldn't wait to play the last one. There's a lot like that, where I mean, I can think even like Sky 1, same deal, like where you want to play the next one as soon as possible. This doesn't have that vibe at all for me. Now, it's because for the most part, it does resolve everything. So like there's not really anything like left over for you to go, okay, can't wait to see what's going on with this. Now it's more of a, I wonder what they're gonna do now sort of deal. But all in all, like character-wise, going beyond the party members, NPCs I think is what really sells it. I do like a lot of the side characters. Marielle and Dingo were fantastic characters. I did like little things like Bermati being like, again, comic relief for some situations. The 2 new Ouroboros characters they revealed in, is it Elroy? Yeah, Elroy Harwood and Lucrezia, I think is the Golden Butterfly. The Oathbreaker and the Golden Butterfly are fucking incredible. And by the way, maybe in my opinion, the best voice acted members of the society at this point. They both come off super unique, and Harwood especially. Oh, I love hearing that voice. So good. So good. There are just some voice actors that is just it hits, and doesn't matter what they say, you're enthralled to every word that they come up with. In other characters, like in similar ways of like how there are just some characters that are just badasses and you want to see more often, like Najee comes to mind. It's nice to see Jin back. That was great. Jin, I don't know what the fuck he's been up to for the last 7 games, but that motherfucker's finally back in business. Some of the new characters that we're getting exposed to, like the Dominions, Leon and Celise, I do like them as well. Prince Sharid being basically, another Prince Olivier, just with more money, it seems. So it's kind of funny. So there's a lot of characters that like really add to things. I'm totally missing a bunch of them otherwise, but like, I mean, even little things like the story with Paulette and Humes, and figuring out who her father is, like Hume's father is. It's in a lot of little interesting things on the side. The main stuff is what kind of doesn't pull its weight nearly as much. I found myself almost enjoying the side stories in Edith between every chapter more than the actual chapters for a while. It really wasn't until the intermission chapter that things really started to ratchet up for me, and I was like, okay, I like this, and then it was almost over as soon as it began, so it's a little disappointing in that matter. I'm trying to think what else I can do before I get into spoiler territory. Oh yeah, the idea that there's a lot of voice acting but only one character in a scene is very jarring and a very strange decision, and kind of supports my idea of that a lot of corners were cut, because there are way too many occurrences where, and I can understand it because it used to happen a lot. When a character comes in for the first time, they always get voiced because you need to hear their voice for the first time and kind of get an idea of who they are. Fine, no problem. If scenes like that is where no one else talks, fine. I don't like the idea of a scene where one person talks and no one else does. I'd rather just the whole scene be voiced. But fine, whatever. But then it happens all the time with characters that have already existed in this game. So you'll have a conversation where Prince Sharid is talking but no one else is, or Bergrand is talking and no one else is, or Van is talking and no one else is, or like, you get it, someone is talking, voice acting, and no one else does. It's just one person. It's very weird. It's very fucking stupid. Like, and I'm worried because the localization team is apparently trying to get things out faster, so we'll see Trails Through Daybreak 2 next year, which is way faster than we're used to. That concerns me because of the voice acting now. I do not want every single one of these games going forward to be 10% voiced and in very random places. I would rather, if you're going to do 10% voiced, pick 10% of the scenes, and those are the only scenes with dialogue, or with voice dialogue, I should say. And then the rest of them is just text. Fine. But stop making it weird. Like, I was playing it in Discord to people, and every time that the scene happens, somebody would be like, that's really fucking weird that, like, only that person's talking. And then every, like, 7 different characters talk, but without voice acting. It's really, really fucking strange that they made that choice. And I agree, it's really dumb. I don't know what the reasoning is for that. So I would hope that this gets fixed going forward. The other thing is, there's no, like, side game. There's no, like, mini game, like, say, what Vantage Masters or, I can't remember what the name of the other one that was started in the first couple of Cold Steel games, where it was more of a sort of a play the numbers games, try to get ahead of your. I can't explain it very well. I think it was like cross or something. I know that's not the word, but it was something similar to that. But like, there's nothing like that at all. So there isn't even like anything all that fun to do otherwise, apart from just the side missions, which there are some good ones. But you know, it definitely kind of feels again like there's some stuff that just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the amount of mini games they put in Reverie, for example. Now that won't happen again unless they do something similar to that. But like, fine, no problem. But like, you couldn't even give us one. That just seems weird. The game this time around is a little more adult themed in the sense of it's definitely darker. There's definitely more of a penchant for violence. Like, there's actually blood spilled. Almost immediately, someone gets their throat slit. So like, they ain't hiding as much. To the point that, like, you know, it definitely seems like they're trying to lean into an older audience, to which I also want to say, why was it then built for babies? Because it's really easy. So the difficulty thing, I played on easy. Now, I have always played games on easy in the series if the difficulty exists. A lot of the times before that, with like the Trails games, every time you lose a fight and restart it, it would make that fight a little bit easier. And I just keep dying until I finally get to a point where it'd be fine. But like Cold Steel, the option always existed, so I played on easy, and it was fine. Like there was just enough interest to it so that it wasn't just mindless, and I could enjoy the story. This time around, it is so unbelievably mindless. I feel like I almost need to replay it on standard. I was gonna switch over halfway in, but then realized I've already adapted to this. I might as well just stick to it and get through the story, because I was still kind of like wanting to just kind of push through as quickly as possible because I wasn't sure if I was liking it that much. So I just kind of stuck through to get through the gameplay. But like, easy is way too fucking easy. I've seen on many Reddit posts that even Nightmare is the easiest it's ever been. So like, it just seems like the difficulty across the board has changed. And I mean, it's not like I'm opposed to it. I guess if I play on standard, then I'll see if, you know, if that's actually what the difficulty is for this series that I want. But like, again, when you've played so many of these and you suddenly have to retrain everything you know, it gets a little bit irritating. It's bad enough that I'm trying to adjust to the combat. It's bad enough that I'm trying to adjust to completely new worlds and whatever else. But now you're also making it so that, like, the treasure chests give you nothing. The combat is too easy. So, like, you're just... And there's, like, no customizability in the same way. Like, I can't have a broken evasion counter build anymore. I can't have a broken magic build. I can't have a broken speed build. Like, I can't do any of these things anymore. It's just load up Van so that whenever he does S-crafts, it crits like a son of a bitch. And then do that for boss battles, you win, and if you somehow don't, it ain't going to take much longer to kill them. Or you have a Zerum powder, give him CP again, and boom, more S-crafts, and you win this time. I didn't even have to worry about the final boss that much. It was a little, like, at that point, it's just like, fuck, whatever, like... I already committed to this bit on easy so much at this point, like, whatever it is, what it is. But, you know, it shouldn't be, the final boss shouldn't be hit him in less than, you can kill him in less than 10 hits. And it's not even a fact of bullet sponginess. It's not even a fact of, like, you shouldn't have, like, a high health bar or anything. It's the idea that because of the way the game is designed, you're forced to only go the most broken route. And, because otherwise it was going to be just attack, 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 attack. Because even hitting magic at an elemental weakness isn't that much different than going physical. So I might as well, if I can't break the game in any other way, I might as well break the game in the one way that I seem to see it being existent. And, well, it breaks the game too much, but it's better than literally just hitting X over and over again. So, you know, I think that would be my three major complaints. It's too easy, a lot was cut, and quite frankly, the story just isn't as strong as past games are. Now, other people might have different opinions of the story, and we'll get into that in just a second, but, like, you know, I will say, it's not like it's a bad game. Again, I said it was like a 3.5 out of 6, so it's above average. But, like, I would not sit here and say, oh, you need to play this one over any of the others. If there was a starting point I would tell you to go with, just go with Cold Steel. And again, that's my bias because I really like Cold Steel, and I know a lot of the Trails fans are going to watch this and be like, no, you got to start with Sky. I know. But, like, if you don't want to go back and play much older games that were designed for what almost feels like mobile devices, like a handheld, like a PlayStation Portable, start with Cold Steel. A little bit easier that way. It's a little more modern. Like, if you don't want to have to play 11 games, start with Cold Steel, and you can YouTube Sky and Azure. Or if you're really, really interested after you've played a bit of Cold Steel, you can go back and play the other ones. It's not like they're not on Steam and getting cheaper by the day. So plenty of options around that. But that is going to be all for as much non-spoiler stuff as I can give. So this is going to be the part where I start getting into more spoilery territory. Definitely going to lean into the story, things like the ending and things like more of the reveals of things, especially the big moment in the intermission chapter that really kind of flips things over. So again, if you have not finished this game yet and don't want to be spoiled, this is the time where you can head on out. Thanks for watching. I'd say leave comments, but the comment section might be spoilery. That's always a risk too, so just be aware of that. But like, again, not a bad game, just definitely not to the same level of what I expect from a Trails game, especially after my enjoyment of Cold Steel and Reverie. But anyways, spoiler time. Here we go. So, as I said, the ending to this game is completely resolved at this point, apart from one little thing, which is who is C. I have my suspicions. Like, the one guess that came to me was, again, because they do seem to mean somebody. I thought Cronkite might have been somebody, because that could be, like, as a scientist, you could say, oh, he's, like, the new brains of the operation sort of deal, is, like, a smaller thing. The party members, reveal, like, say what happened in Cold Steel 1. I couldn't see happening again, just because no one really matches with that. And also, unless, like, you're saying someone's real name, like who? Maybe no. Maybe Katra isn't his real name, or isn't their real name, which, again, would love to know. Like, you guys that are watching in the comments, like, do you have any idea, like, unless you somehow read into it and it's already been revealed in a future, in, like, Daybreak 2, because I know some people have already played it because either they know Japanese or they played a translated version, even though it's not been properly localized with voice acting yet, because somebody always finds a way to translate stuff ahead of time. But did you think the catcher was a guy, girl, or even non-binary? Like, right away I'm like, oh, this is clearly the girl who's dressed like a guy sort of deal. And the longer the game goes, I'm like, I still think that that's the case, but they could also be doing some weird stuff, similar to like how Bridget from Guilty Gear is, where Bridget was raised as a woman but is actually biologically male. So there's a lot of interesting things that could be going into that. But like, in going back to the ending, like, everything is pretty much resolved that would need to, apart from C, who they are. And the problem with that is it means, well, there's nothing to really latch onto for a second game. And when the story took as long as it did to finally latch on a little bit, it's a little disappointing in that regard. Now, granted, was it not really fucking cool to find that Van is literally one of the 77 devils? Yeah, I was pretty cool with that. I actually thought the longer the things went on that I'm like, I wonder if he's similar to what McBurn is. Like, he's an entity from another dimension and just like had amnesia or something and forgot. And then you realize the diabolic core and that it belongs to one of the 5 overseers, I think they call them, of the 77 devils. So he's basically like a god, or he's housing a god. I know that they'll say he's housing. Let's be real, he's a fucking god. He's got the power of one in his chest. Okay, like, come on. There's still a little bit to go of like, what's Mare, what's the Grendel, what's the speech that keeps getting, blanked out, in the same way that like whenever you were talking to like gods in Cold Steel and they would always blank out certain words because you just couldn't fathom what they meant. I think that concept is kind of dumb, because to be honest, most of the words when they bring them up don't mean anything unless you're a super lore person. So like, anytime that they said like, oh, they're actually one of the devils or whatever, I'm like, okay, like, I don't read the lore, like, I just know that must be bad. But like, if they didn't hide these words that say either Mare or who else was saying it? I'm trying to remember who else actually did. I know somebody, I think, well, obviously the devil at the end did, but like, even if they said what those words are, I don't think it suddenly would have tipped anything for me. I don't think it would have made me go, oh, I would have just gone, those are words. But either way. But like, it was a fine ending. It's just a matter of like, again, I thought they were going to pull the bait and switch almost with, how Reen does in CS4. But that didn't happen, thank God. I didn't want to have to replay that fight again, even though it didn't take very long. But like, most of the story doesn't really latch at all, at least not until the nuke goes off in Cray, which was a huge shock. Now, granted, I've become accustomed to Jet. Giacomo dying early was a big thing, and then obviously Ida not long after that. I honestly thought once we got to Tharbad that one of Sara and Shahina were going to die, and somehow they didn't. Somebody else did die, but it wasn't anybody I gave a shit about, so it was fine. I knew right away when Ida died that they were taking the gloves off for the most part, because I went, oh shit, they killed a hot girl. They mean business. When they're taking off sex appeal, you know they're fucking serious. They didn't go as far as I thought they would. Like, nobody super major really died, apart from Dingo, which at that point, it was, similar to what, oh my god, Bridget and, who was the guy? Oh my god. I can't think of his name now. Well, no, it wasn't Kenneth, that was the fishing guy. I can't think of the guy's name, but like, the two classmates at Thor's that end up getting married by the time the arc is done. Like, it was reminding me with him and Marielle, with Dingo and Marielle. It was starting to give me vibes like, I'm like, oh, they're gonna have a budding relationship as the game goes on. And then Dingo just fucking dies, and I'm like, oh. Well, so much for that story. Well, fuck Marielle then, I guess, because I don't know how... I mean, I'm sure that she'll just become, like, the next Dingo. She'll start becoming, a big, journalist going really deep into the trenches and stuff and have her own thing. But, like, the part that I liked about her, which was this, I'm totally in love with you, but I'm also being somewhat tsundere about it and also trying to hide the fact, even though it's blatantly obvious, so obviously I think Judith even figures it out. Because Judith can't keep a secret. Marielle certainly can't as much either. And then that's gone, so it was a little bit disappointing. But that was the moment at least where I went, okay, so we're starting now. And, it definitely did pick up, but I never felt like it was truly great at any point. It was more just interesting. Like, when you're in the intermission chapter and you meet Shizuna, and I fucking love her, and I've seen screenshots that make me lead to believe that she and Celise might be party members in the next game, which, if that's true, sign me the fuck up. I love both of those characters in that game. Same with Leon. I liked, actually, both him and Celise in terms of our two new Dominions. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, for the most part, like, that chapter was fine, seeing her and Rocksmith for the first time, being like, what the fuck are you doing here? And you start to wonder, is there a political struggle? Like, I'm starting to wonder, okay, well, Agnes's dad is President Gramhart. What's going on with that? And then nothing comes of it. So, like, a lot of stuff that feels like it could have gone somewhere doesn't. Like, Almada, for what we know, is gone, because they're all dead or captured now. And the main ones, like Gerard Dantes and Melchior, are super fucking dead. So, like, any interest, like, in Cold Steel, it was all about the class war. And in this one, it seemed like it was playing very much into an immigration battle between, anti-immigration and people that are for it. And that made me wonder, okay, is there going to be, like, some sort of, like, terrorist attack that, like, goes after a bunch of people like your Saras and Shahinas and Sharid and Naja, like, going out on war with, like, the Tharbad area? Was Gramhart going to do anything that kind of lean in the direction of, we need to get people out of our country, sort of, we need to get these people, like, you people, sort of, but that never comes to anything. It may still happen, because, I mean, the biggest realistic theme of the game, in the same way, like I said, class wars and other things in other games have gone through, like, this was definitely all about immigration and racism. And I thought they were going to go harder on it, and they didn't. I mean, they did in little bits here and there with some of the side stories and such, but, like, they never truly went there in the main story, aside from Elaine's dad was of anti-immigration sentiment, and he was one of the biggest backers. Actually, no, he was the biggest backer of Almada, because they got into his ear and made him think that they were in support of his anti-immigration things that he wanted to commit to, when in reality, they just wanted his fucking money so they could do whatever they want. But, like, all that stuff really falls by the wayside at the end, where it just becomes, they're just trying to summon another god-like dungeon that's going to train or change the entire world, and you have to kill God again. Like, every time one of these dungeons comes up, I go, how many of these motherfuckers exist on this continent? I swear to God, like, it's like, literally, every religion known to man decided to leave, like, an apocalyptic entity on the continent, and we're just slowly in like a 20-year span digging them all up. It's fucking bizarre when you think about how, like, the break between this game and Reverie is the longest time of peace I think this timeline's ever had since Sky 1 started, is kind of crazy. And it was like at most 2 years between Reverie and this game. So Holy shit, Zemuria, you just can't catch a fucking break, can you? Here we are in the present day where we got over COVID and all of a sudden monkeypox is starting to be a thing. Think of that, but like every 2 years, there was another outbreak of something happening. It's fucking wild what Zemuria goes through. So, I mean, all in all, I mean, there are little things I could pop out here and there, but for the most part, like, my biggest complaint story-wise was the fact that nothing ever seems to go full-on, like, big-time mode apart from the nuke, which just kind of wakes you up. But they didn't really build upon it to the point of, like, I just wanted Melchior dead because he was a smug piece of shit. He was Campanella on steroids. So, I just wanted that motherfucker gone. Anything else was not... Like, Dante's I didn't care too much about. The only villain that I actually liked a lot was Olympia, but that's also because she reminds me so much of Ramlethal from Guilty Gear that I was just like, oh, cool. A tanned, like, white-haired, you know, red-eyed, like, very emotionless girl. Yes, give me more of that. And I'm excited to actually see what happens with her. But, like, the other ones, like, Alexander, and I can't think of the girl's name, who was the darker skin, like, busty chick with the needle gun. I can't remember her name. But I don't really care about either of those two. Melchior, motherfucker's dead. I don't care anymore. And Dante's honestly was just, okay, I get it. You're evil. Okay? Can we fight now so I can get through this part? I never really felt like in the same... Like, he felt like he was trying to be Gileath Osborne, but without the power. Like, without the military might, without the political might. So he didn't feel nearly as threatening to me, even though he, you know, died and became, I guess, sort of like McBurn when you see the markings that like, both him and Melchior had. But, like, again, not nearly the greatest villain. So, like... There wasn't nearly as much there in the mainline story that I would have liked. And even character growth, I said at the top here, like, I don't feel like anyone's truly grown apart from Van going, oh, I guess I do have friends that I can keep close to me. And Anya's going, okay, I won't just be a sheltered girl the entire time. But, like unless, you know, I'm missing stuff. Now, I may just be overlooking things. I may just be, you know, nitpicking a lot, or I may just not be taking nearly as much stock into it. But, like, Fairy is always bubbly. The only difference is she just loses someone that's close to her. But that doesn't really change her. Aaron doesn't really change at all, honestly. So, doesn't really count. Catra doesn't really change at all. Reset only changes because we find out what she actually is, which, cool, she's Cosmos from Xenosaga. I'm in on that. And Bergren, he's already established, so there's no point in him growing. So, oh, sorry, I forgot Judith, which, again, she hasn't grown, but at least she's fucking cool, so I accept that. But, like, I don't feel like anybody's truly grown in this first game. Now, it's one game, but as far as I know, there's only a second one, and then there's a new game that's like a bridge again, it seems like, because it's not named Trails Through Daybreak. So, you know, I don't know how much they're fitting in there. It's more of just an intrigue of, like, well, I'd like to see, like, smaller things. Like, man, I'd love to see Reen and Shizuna in the room together. I'd love to see, you know, Judith with her folks and see what, like, the original Grimcat was up to. You know, I want to see a little bit more with what Van was doing in Mil Mirage and things of his past. But, like, for the most part, there's not a lot that I honestly care nearly that much about to go, like, oh, I need to play Trails Through Daybreak 2 for this. I'm more just like, well, I'm going to play it because I still love Trails. But, like, I'm not nearly as excited as I was, say, when I was getting ready for this game. Even though I was concerned about the combat, I'm like, dude, Calvard? I've been wanting to fucking see what's going on in there for a while. And it was cool to see a bunch of people back. Seeing Kilika back, seeing Jin again, you know, seeing Ren again, seeing Fee again. By the way, Fee is just... Fee makes Elaine human, because Elaine is really fucking boring a lot of the time, and then when you put Fee in the room with Elaine, just knows how to cut to her core. Fee has always been one of my most favorite characters in the series and continues to get better as the games go on. So, good lord. I need to see her and Sarah now that they can both drink together. I need that scene so fucking bad. So that's really what I want. But, like, for the most part, apart from that, like, you know, you're still getting more of stuff from Heiyue. You get a little bit of Rishia Mao and sprinkled in there. Like, it seems like a lot of the heavy lifting was still being done by previous characters. Whereas, like, Cold Steel was completely carried by people that were new. You know, Azure, or Zero, I think, which was the first one, was carried by new people. You know, Joshua and Estelle were there, and so was Ren, but like they were more just there on the side. They were just there during it, whereas Ren especially is leading and is helping the charge a lot. Like she is a huge factor in this game. Jin is a huge factor in this game at times. Kilika is literally like one of the heads of the CID. She's a big presence. So characters that already exist have a major role in this, whereas in most of the other arcs, like any character that is carried over, they don't take that much into account. So like it's a little bit weird that, and now it may just be a matter of there's so many games into this and it's like less than a 10-year span between all of them, you know, in terms of the canon, that it's just hard for it to not have some crossover. But again, it wasn't a problem before that, so how did it become a problem now? Ren especially is the egregious one, where Ren has way too much involvement in this for a game that's supposed to be getting us interested in new people. And I think that's a big part of why I didn't attach to it as much, because the new ones that are there are either not as interesting or almost feel like clones of some characters. Fairy just feels like Fee but peppy, so it didn't really do much for me there. And you take that with it. Like I said, I still have my things where Van feels very much like Reen to me. Agnes feels like a cross between like Toa and fucking oh my god, Emma. So like there's just a lot of little things here and there where it doesn't feel that interesting. I guess the one interesting thing is, hey, here's Bergeron, a fucking old dude. You have an old dude in your party. You have somebody over the age of 25 in your party. Even though I think the game said he's like 69, which, by the way, nice. But also, holy shit, somebody over the age of 30 in this party? Fuck, that feels unheard of. I thought we were only stuck with teenagers. But, I mean, otherwise, like, again, I think my biggest complaint is just the fact that I don't feel like there is nearly that much growth in any aspect. I don't feel like any of the characters really grow that much. I don't feel like the country of Calvard really grows that much. Nothing's really changed. It's just they avoided destruction, I guess. Cool. But like nothing feels like, okay, you know, this has changed. Apart from Grammart has some weapons now, which again leads me to wonder if like, okay, is he going to start some shit? You know, when he said, oh, well, we're not going to use this to start another war like the Empire has or something similar to that. I'd be like, okay, so then what's the point of this scene? And that's why I don't trust those words. But either way, other than that, like, again, like I said earlier, there's really, like, nothing to hold over apart from who's C. But, like, they didn't even give you, like, a post-credits scene or anything to kind of give you, like, this might happen. It literally ends with, you overcame the devil, Van's fine now. That's it. If it was a one-off game, it would have made sense. But in this one, I'm like, okay, but you're supposed to be getting me involved into a second one. What's the reason? What's the pull? There isn't one. If I'm missing one, y'all let me know. I didn't see it. And I watched that whole cutscene. I didn't see it. I just saw an ending. That's all I saw. But yeah, that's... I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything that I'm missing, but I don't think I've really got anything left. So, like, I'll say this, right? Again, it's not a bad game. It's okay. Like, it's fine. I genuinely do believe that this game will be better the second time around because it always tends to be. They always ramp the story up. They make improvements to the battle system. They make improvements with quartz. They add more stuff in. Cool. It'll probably be like at least a B rank this time around. If it stays at a C rank, we're in trouble. If it stays, in my opinion, a C rank when I finish 2, I'm really fucking concerned. But, like, my guess is there's going to be more quartz. There's going to be more, like, a better, like, I'm hoping they mess with the difficulty a little bit to, you know, make easy not nearly as stomp heavy as it is. I'm hoping that they give us some more treasures that are worth collecting. I hope that they don't tie everything to achievements again. I hope they're leaving, like, a mini game of some sort. I'm hoping that they're, you know, adding a couple more characters that are interesting. Oh, I didn't even think about this the entire time. How the fuck was there no costumes in this game? I had a deluxe edition, but, like, I think at one point in the stores you buy, like, a hair color for the first 4, and then that's it. Reset, Catra, Judith, Bergren, none of them have one, unless I missed it. But I checked every store when I was at a new store. Nothing. Did I miss something? Not even an outfit? Not at any point in this game could they have possibly had these characters wear something different? No? No time for that? Really? I know that, you want to maybe stick to having, a much more consistent thing. Okay, fine. But you certainly can't do that again at 2. You certainly can't. Like, the whole idea of something like a New Game Plus also is that, if you want to play the story again, you can mess with them and make their looks a little bit different. Even like Cold Steel 3 would have stuff you could unlock. And these were a lot of new characters. I don't understand why they suddenly took so much away. Again, like, so much got cut. It's just weird. But you guys that are watching this, thank you for getting all the way through here. So I want you guys to say in the comments below, like, did I miss something? Is there anything that, like, maybe I maybe should have looked into more? If you played on other difficulties, like, how was Standard comparatively to the prior games? How was Nightmare compared to the prior other games? Is there lore from some of these characters that maybe I missed, or maybe I'm misconstruing or misinterpreting something? So, like, maybe these characters actually are a lot better than I think they are. Maybe the story's better than I think they are. Maybe there's more signs of things that I'm missing. Like, let me know. Now, again, remember, this is my opinion. Just because I think it's a C and think it's, like, the worst of the series doesn't mean, your enjoyment of it is any less. So keep that in mind, because I've seen some people, whenever I say something negative about a thing, they like go, oh, well, you're a fucking idiot. You could not possibly understand what... Guys, I played the game in full. That's what I got out of it. I might have missed some shit. I may just I may have different tastes. It's okay to just say, oh, hey, like, I don't quite see what you see, but hey, this is how I felt about it. So just keep that in mind. I'm happy to have a dialogue with any of y'all in the chat, in the comments section. Always happy to. So put whatever you want in there, and we'll chat later. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, I do have my Pixel Play podcast that I do with my friends Kaylin and Chris. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check us out there. So with that being said, I'm looking forward to Trails 2 for this arc. Just not as much as, say, I have with any other one. I was really looking forward to Cold Steel 2. I was really looking forward to Sky 2. I was really looking forward to Trails to Azure. This one, I'm more just like, well, I do like Trails, so I guess I'll play the next one. But now I'm going in with a little concern. Going, if they don't fix a lot of the things that I had wrong with it, I don't know if I can keep playing these games. I mean, I'll play the next one because it says, like, Say Goodbye, Zemiri, or something like that, where I go, well, I have to play that with a name like that. But, like, it's getting to a point that I'm a little guarded in the same way that, like I said with Final Fantasy games, I don't know if I'll ever play a Final Fantasy game again unless it's turn-based. 16 burned me that bad, and they've had 20 years to fix me, and it hasn't worked. Trails, you've got a little more rope at this point, but that doesn't mean you get to hang yourself with it. Just pull me back in with it, okay? That's all I'm asking. So, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the comment section, and take care. Bye-bye for now.